Alright guys, so I got the car in the garage up on jack stands, got the Wilson tires off of it. I took the brake line loose from the body side of the car. I went through and I loosened up all the control arm bolts on the rear end side of the car, so both uppers, both lowers. They all came out great. They all spun, all the bolts spun, so they're not seized in the bushings, which is, a good thing. What I need to do now is move the jack over underneath the rear end, and then I'll take the shocks loose from the rear end, and then I'll take the forward drive shaft bolts out. I'm just going to set the drive shaft over to the side. I'm going to leave it shoved into the transmission, hopefully not lose any fluid. And then I'll lower the rear end down just a little bit, take out the springs, and then I'll pull the 4 control arm bolts loose, drop the rear end out, slide it over here, and then I'll take the brake line off of it, transfer that to the 8.8, and then I'll reverse the process of putting that back in the car. One thing I decided to go ahead and do is I have these 2 upper control arms. I don't know what brand they are, maybe like UPRs, but they're just solid tubulars. They're non-adjustables, of course, but the bushings look good. One thing I enjoy about working on this car is normally I'd say, okay, I need to clean all this crap up. I need to paint the rear end before I put it in. I need to, paint those up before I put them in. I'm just going to go ahead and just slap everything together and just be cheap about this project. That's what this project's supposed to be all about. It's just slapping stuff together. Basically, minimal money, minimum effort, maximum results. And for 1984 Ford LTD, you don't have to feel too guilty about slapping stuff together, because I guaranteed if I didn't end up with this car, probably in the next year or two, it would end up in the crusher. And the car is a solid car. The car's real solid. The floorboards are really solid. I'm pretty happy with how everything's going. So got about 10 minutes into it now. And I figured another 30 minutes or so, the rear end should be out on the ground. Would you just look at that? Got the rear end out. Like I said, I wasn't going to film the whole process because my camera batteries does not like this cold weather. It's probably, I don't know, in the teens in here, probably 14, 15 degrees right now. So it's cold. I went home, took a little break after the first portion of the video, and when I came back, I basically just pulled the drive shaft bolts, pulled the shock bolts from the rear end, and left them hanging on the car. I pulled the emergency brake cables from the body of the car, left them attached to the rear end. Let's see, what else did I do? I let the rear end drop, and basically I just was working on the passenger side first. So I put the jack over on the driver's side of the rear end, jacked it up, which forced the passenger side of the rear end down. And basically, I just took a jack handle, wedged it between the spring and the lower control arm, and I pushed down on the drum of the rear end as hard as I could, and I just popped the spring from the lower control arm. So I've never had a problem doing that. I have in the past tied the springs down or wrapped a piece of chain through the control arm to the spring so it couldn't pop out and kill me, but I've never found that really necessary. I've never found that there's really any force on the backside of the spring doing it that way. But you should probably wrap a piece of chain around the spring through the control arm so it can't kill you. Once I got the springs out, I took the top control arm bolts out. Like I said, I already had them loose, so they just popped right out. then I just took the lower control arm bolts out, let down the jack, slid the rear end out. So it's a pretty easy process. I've done it a couple times, so it's not bad at all now. I was hoping to get the other 8.8 rear end in, but that's not going to happen now. It's probably 5 or 6 o'clock. It's time to call it a day. So one day this week I'll come over and toss the upper control arms in place, and then I'll take off the brake line off this rear end, get the other rear end over here and change out the brake lines and get it slid underneath the car. And then I don't think I'm going to put it back in until I have somebody just to kind of help me. I've done it before by myself, but it's not a whole lot of fun. If you can have just a second person to kind of help, wiggle things around a little bit. So I would say probably sometime through the week or maybe next weekend, I'll get a video of getting the rear end in, and we'll take it for a test drive and see if the 373 gears help the old 3.8 out. And then the next step will probably be tracking down a cam for the 5.0, and then collecting parts for it. I'm going to leave the C5 in the car for right now and just drop the V8 in, stock stall and everything, and just to get it kind of driving and tuned, get the carburetor all tuned up and everything. And then probably sometime when it warms up just a little bit, I'll probably throw the T5 in there, and then we'll be good to go. Like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff, comment.